Okay, guys, I am gonna do this really quickly because people are freaking out about it. People are upset. And so I'm just gonna do a really quick video about this article so that everyone can have something that they can point people to and sort of explain it in words that are okay. So we are going to talk about this article that everybody is losing their ish over: the bitch media, no girls allowed, the lasting rules of Gamergate and toxic misogyny, the fragility of gaming culture. I recommend that people do not get upset over a article that begins with such a cliche. No girls allowed. Seriously. But I'm not going to harp on that. I'm not going to point out that toxic misogyny is a redundant statement. All misogyny is toxic. That's why it's misogyny. How is it a non-toxic fear and hatred of women? Okay, these words are thrown around. Now, I want to give you a bit of background about Bitch Media and Bitch Magazine. In terms of tone, this has always been what this magazine has done. It has always been very in your face, very aggressive. It is a response to something that, second wave and early third wave feminism referred to as tone policing, that women had to do something and be nice about it, whereas men could just come right out and say what they wanted. But agree with that or not, that was the intent with Bitch Magazine and these articles. And it is all over the place. People have been saying that this author, Sam, stop it thing, um, Sam Riddell or Rydell or whatever, is a man. She's not. She's female. But let's get into the article because essentially, I read it. I think it's a word salad and a collection of anecdotes. I am not even going to read the opening paragraph because it is so. Uh, for an article that claims words are violence, this article sure commits violence against gamers in the opening paragraphs, and I'm not going to read them accordingly. They do not deserve to be repeated. They are offensive both to gamers and cancer survivors, people with cancer. I do not like cancer as a metaphor because cancer is cancer and using it as a metaphor, but people have the right to do it. I have the right to not repeat it. The overall problem with this article is that it focuses on the influx of new people, of casuals, some of us would say, into the um, into the ranks of gamers, attending conventions and buying consoles and playing online and all that stuff. And they are treating it as if gamers are somehow infecting the culture with misogynies, okay? But in truth, what's actually happening is that the sudden influx of tens of thousands of people into an event, there's going to be a couple of assholes. So this article inverts what I believe is actually happening, in that when you expand the ranks, you get a few jerks. And jerks is a gender neutral term, okay? But going back to the Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider story, people love to focus on the slider error that they kind of crap on it. They accidentally increased her bust by 150%. They fail to um, they fail to point out that Toby Gard, the designer of Lara Croft, eventually parted with the franchise over creative differences. So making him seem like this, oh, he's such a pig, it's not fair. Um, and I'm sure that's got to drive him crazy. But it actually was an accident. And there's a lot more to Lara Croft's appeal than just boobs. And you see the sort of problems with the argument when it jumps from Lara Croft, who was such a phenomenon during the PlayStation era of the original PlayStation console era of gaming, that she was on the cover of Entertainment Weekly. She was like a crossover phenomenon. Everybody knows who Lara Croft is. But they compare her to secondary characters, non-playable characters in games. And I'm going to say no more on this because it's going to be in the first episode of Lady Bits. And please, honestly, guys, if this upsets you, if these issues bother you, the best thing you can do is support positive projects. I was really hesitant to talk about this in the first place because I got my own stuff I'm dealing with now. I feel like signal boosting this stuff is wrong because it's false. And we know from the articles about what debunking fake news does is all the debunking fake news does is spread the fake news. So I am really going to go over this quickly, but please, if you can, back the Kickstarter. It is the best thing we can do because we're going to discuss these issues together in, as a chatter points out, something that's not a correlation does not equal causation problem. Another chatter said misogynist gamers are misogynists that happen to be gamers. It's not that gamers are evil. There are cruel people everywhere. Precisely. This is the thing that this article does not understand. They talk about rape jokes being plentiful in online chats, and that is true in some online chats. That is not true in all online chats, and I don't think it's right for a reporter to cover this, and not even anecdotally. The reporter is covering this as hearsay. They did not experience this. This is supposed to be background, but it's a Guardian article from 2008, and you'll notice that they mention Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn, Felicity Day, and Brianna Wu. They appear not to have been interviewed for this article, which is a big pet peeve of mine. If you write an article like this and you draw fire with an article like this, which is what these articles do, it doesn't matter who writes them or how these things get noise. It is not fair to drag these 4 women into this article without their consent. If you believe that words are violence, then you are committing violence, and I don't, for the record. But this author does. This opinion writer does. So since she believes that words are violence, she is committing violence against these 4 women against their consent. Because people are not going to yell just at Sam Riddle or Riddle. What is with that last name in journalists? Like, ugh! But they are not just going to go after her. They are going to go after everyone mentioned in this article. And it is not fair, if you believe someone has been harassed, to make that harassment worse by, see, someone says, wait, Felicity and Sarkeesian together? Yeah, no, all they are is referenced. They were nowhere together. They were, like, you don't, this is irresponsible. This is beyond just being wrong. This is irresponsible. You know, Anita Sarkeesian is stepping away from games. Let her go. Okay? Let her go. Let her go. You know? Like, was that the right song? Yeah, it was. Okay. Frozen. Yeah. The stream has been going for 9 minutes, Yossi. But this is really wrong. Okay? You, as a reporter, there is an element of, yes, get the story, but there is also an element of not causing harm in your reporting. You got to get it right, but if somebody doesn't want to go on the record, somebody doesn't want to go on the record. And you could argue that Felicia Day is a public person, Anita Sarkeesian is a public person. Well, Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu are game developers, and I know you can question that. Not the point right now, guys. Let's be nice. Let's give people the benefit of the doubt. It is different to drag someone like this in. Zoe Quinn became a name because of Gamergate. And if you believe the established narrative that she was doing nothing wrong and was totally harassed, let it pass. You know, it's no one wants to be known. Whatever you think of Zoe Quinn, no one wants to be known as the Five Guys girl. And when you continue bringing up this narrative, when you continue to talk about that instead of her work, you perpetuate that reputation that she is known for what she did sexually as opposed to what she's done as a game designer. And that is against every feminist principle that I know. And this is the problem with these outrage feminists talking about this stuff. And this is part of the reason I didn't want to dive into this article. Because talking about this article means examining these things, meaning I'm complicit in continuing this story. And I think it's wrong. And Time to Japan in the chat mentioned all I ever cared about was Nathan Grayson covering her when a friendship, romantic or relationship or otherwise, without disclosure. And this article talks about that in a way that I don't think, and someone points out that minimize harm is part of the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics. Absolutely right. I just didn't have the citation off the top of my head, so I didn't reference it. Now, this article goes into one guy, okay, one guy at a convention of 80,000 people, PAX East, taking a picture of a cosplayer's ass. 1 in 80,000. Now, that does happen. That does happen. The thing is, those guys are seen as asshole losers because there are plenty of people who will let you take their picture. A guy who is taking a picture of a girl's ass, well, you know, it's likely that after this, stop this stupid email. But it's, I wish I could turn that off. But it's likely that right after this guy took that picture, there, whoops, you guys saw a picture of Momo there. The guy's friends said, dude, why did you do that? This is tricky because saying this happens is factual. Saying it is normal is not factual. It is not normal for someone to take surreptitious ass shots. Now, this behavior was not created by gaming conventions. Back when I was a kid, a guy was arrested at a local mall for putting mirrors on his feet so he could look up ladies' dresses. And yes, Time to Japan, it's someone saying he had, we don't know if he even actually did. Now, my attitude as a cosplayer, and I got a lot more of this stuff as a booth babe than a cosplayer. And this is the thing about the whole demonization of booth babes that I take real issue with. The more profession, the more a job gets stigmatized, the worse the worse the people working those jobs are treated. And one person in the chat, and I'm going to address this just to make the point, people argue gamers aren't misogynist when shit like Metroid Other M was made to appeal to them. On an individual, sure, many aren't, but marketing department think you are, as a group are. I have never heard anybody talk about Metroid Other M as anything but a hot mess disaster. And this is one of these things. Yes, Metroid Other M exists. Most people believe it was the worst Metroid game. And just because a marketing department screws up, that logic that gamers must be misogynist because a marketing department did something misogynist, that means gamers want bad facial animations because Mass Effect Andromeda made characters that look like crap. It's the correlation is not causation thing again. So yeah, I have heard a lot of people complain about Metroid Other M, but I got to move on because this is going to be super long and people watching this after the fact, these diversions don't help. But I just wanted to do that so people didn't feel like I was ignoring a particular point of view. And this is another example of anecdotes do not necessarily take you to the facts. And they talk about PAX East, which this whole part should have been just a few sentences long. This article is way longer than it has to be, and it displays like crap on mobile. Who cares what the creators of PAX said it was? I think it's to point out that it's a couple of guys that started the whole thing, which I find, that who cares? Who cares about the gender of the owners? Talking about panels. Yes, we know what a Comic-Con is. Here's the part later down about Gamergate and Depression Quest and all that stuff. And full disclosure, I gave Zoe Quinn $5 for Depression Quest back in the day before Gamergate got started. I thought it was an interesting experiment. Yes, it didn't have any graphics. I don't want to get into whether it was a game or not. I'm like, good try, here's $5. I did. So, I say that so people know, and so somebody doesn't go and find it. I don't think it's relevant based on what I'm going to say, but it's actually not true. Just after Depression Quest was released on Steam, the gaming community exploded. That wasn't it. The thing was the Zoe post. It sounds like it was connected, and it wasn't. The Zoe post wasn't connected to the release of Depression Quest. It was connected to a horrible breakup. But look at how it's read. Quinn's ex-boyfriend, Aaron Gione, I hope I'm saying that right, laid forth extraordinary allegations that Quinn was not only a bad girlfriend, but also an unethical businesswoman to boot. Gione claimed that Quinn had been dating games reviewer Nathan Grayson, la, 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 la. Of course, Grayson never covered Depression Quest, and he and Quinn had only gone on a handful of dates. So she did date him. So the accusations are essentially factual. The connecting the dots may have been wrong. So they slept together. Nathan Grayson produced a brief article that referenced Zoe Quinn. It was a small reference in a much larger article. I believe it was neither positive or negative. One chatter rightly pointed out that it was the Game Jam article, and the article was quite positive. So, fact, there was positive coverage generated by Nathan Grayson. Fact, him and Zoe Quinn had a relationship, a brief relationship. But, the connect the dots, which happens in journalism all the time, to be fair. And this was not even journalism. This was a private citizen's blog post. Okay? But the dots were connected causally instead of just correlation. But that is completely understandable when somebody is hurt and has just been cheated on. Okay? And this is used as this big example of misogyny. Now, flip it around. If a guy had slept around with his girlfriend and she wrote a blog post, in our benevolently sexist society, this would be seen as her standing up for herself. But when we flip the genders, when we flip the genders, we get a very different outcome. And this is the connection that gamers make and say, that's not fair. And they get accused of misogyny even though they're right. We do have a double standard regarding infidelity in our society. And we don't have time to talk about that right now. I'm just bringing it up right now to challenge the assumptions surrounding it. We can't treat someone differently because they are a man who's been cheated on instead of a woman who's been cheated on. And someone said I should play Cards Against Humanity on Lady Bits. Cards Against Humanity should always be played in private. I've played Cards Against Humanity. You need the right group. But then they talk about, and this is another weakness of the article, this Twitch streamer, Narcissa Wright. First of all, awesome name. But her deleting her account on Twitch because she was transitioning and got some hate. Now, this is a complicated one because they don't detail what happened to her. And maybe there's more to the story here. Let's click through. It's taking a while. Okay, unhappy. Reading, sorry, give me a second. Okay, so this to me reads, first of all, if someone is taking hate because they're transitioning, that is transphobia, not misogyny. Okay. So it doesn't really belong in this article about toxic misogyny. And again, as I pointed out, all misogyny is toxic. Like, I hate redundancies. I believe in precision of language, even though I talk a lot. I know, but YouTube is a more free-reeling, free-form format. But every YouTuber occasionally has this feeling, why do I exist to be insulted for a living? And that is nothing unique to women. Sorry, hit the mic. Nothing unique to men. Nothing unique to trans people. That is YouTube. That is the reality of bringing your personal stuff. You know, it's a very vulnerable medium, and that's why people like it. But this has nothing to do with Narcissa Wright's gender. It has nothing to do with Narcissa Wright's gender identity. I used to work in music programming, which it's so funny because the thing about me is I have a unique perspective on gaming because I worked in the media outside of gaming. And the vitriol leveled against us by 14-year-old girls back in the day in music programming was nearly identical to the vitriol that some gamers lob at game devs and game journalists. Game journalists are more accurate because we weren't musicians, we were music programmers. So I'm like, okay, this is just what people do about the stuff they love. It's not a guy thing, it's not a girl thing, it's a we love it thing, it's a fan thing. Sorry, I'm wrecking people's productivity. I will wrap up. I'm trying to keep this to half an hour. I'm only doing this because a guy on Twitter absolutely practically begged me. Like, he arm twisted me. I didn't want to give this any light or air, but he said that people have to debunk it, so I'm doing it. Let's move on. This Narcissa Wright stuff bothers me because this is an op-ed writer using someone's deeply personal, painful story as an out-of-place anecdote. Again, did not contact Narcissa Wright for a quote, did not ask if they wanted to participate in the article. Is this a new article? Someone asked. It dropped. Yeah, it's brand new, May 11th. You can't drag people into your articles when they're essentially private people without contacting them and allowing them the opportunity to comment. People can't shut down the press, but you can't just do this and not. There is no indication that anybody referenced in this article was contacted for comment. And that is a really lazy part of journalism in general, but journalism especially. It's all speed. And let's generate content because each article brings in a relatively small amount of money. So, click, get the click. It's not about doing it right. Okay. But the other thing is, it says right here, Narcissa Wright returned to streaming. But the question remains, will the gaming community ever remedy its toxicity, or is it simply baked in? Excuse me for a second, I'll blow me. Blow me! And I know I don't have a real penis, but like, imagine it. Like, there are parts of the gaming community that are very toxic. There are other parts of the gaming community that are wonderful and welcoming and supportive. And my God, I was helping somebody through a bad time last night. I have never met in person. I have done a couple of web streams with her. She's a gamer. I'm a gamer. That's all that matters. When you get past the gloss, when you get past our tendency to talk rough with each other, which is just this idiomatic tick, gamers have each other's backs. And a chatter rightly points out they are confusing rudeness for abuse. Now, taking a picture of a woman's ass without her permission goes beyond rudeness into you shouldn't be freaking doing it. It is wrong, and the problem is conventions in general. These big conventions are so big that what do you do about it? I mean, I had a guy take a picture with me when I was wearing that Princess Leia bikini, and he yanked the chain so hard it actually hurt my neck. But what do? I yelled at the guy. I told him to get away. But the problem is, the minute you call, what am I supposed to do? Detain him by making a citizen's arrest and like slamming him down on the booth I was working at? Like, the problem is there aren't enough people watching what's going on. But that is true of any convention. It is the convention format, not the fact that it's a bunch of nerds, because I have found, and I've done a lot of conventions, so yes, this is anecdotal, but I think it's a very strong anecdote. The more core nerd conventions, meaning the people who are actually fans, not the rubberneckers who show up once a weekend to buy a Superman t-shirt you can buy at your local comic book store every single day with the week. It's the normies. It's the spectator nerds that bring that crap in. It's not the core people, because the core people have to see you again. And that is my belief, because this stuff doesn't happen in the same way at the smaller hotel conventions where there are only 600 people and most people know everybody's name and everybody's face. It's a very different thing. It's that when people have relative anonymity, the greater internet fuckwad theory applies in real life. But, and then they talk about the Diversity in Gaming Coalition held a panel on stopping online bullying and concluded that fixing people who want to cause harm is our goal, but is not realistic. Ending 20 minutes early after focusing primarily on hawking t-shirts and signing up new partners. Okay, that's pretty epic fail, but the conclusion we can draw from this is that gaming needs better online harassment workers. Gee, we all agree with that. The system's not working. And what does this have to do with misogyny? Here's the problem with the idea of fixing people. You can't fix people. The common refrain over and over and over again around the world, especially involving issues of diversity, especially involving issues with women and girls. And I'm not talking about bad words on the internet. I'm talking things like menstruation taboos, where the girls have to sleep in a shack outside whenever they get their period with the livestock, and they're possibly bitten by snakes or die of exposure. Some women get carbon monoxide poisoning because they try to start a fire in the shack and it's an enclosed space, for warmth, and there's nowhere for it to vent. It's a terrible practice, but the government of I think it was Nepal, tried to legislate it to be illegal. They passed legislation saying you can't do, what is it, chowdhury, or I think it's called, I'm not sure. But they found that out in the small villages, people still practiced it. The only thing that has been gradually reducing the problem is education. And this is the same of a lot of things. There are a couple of hot button issues I'm not touching on because people have strong feelings about it. However, education is the only way to, allow us to decide what we want out of our community together. You cannot fix a person. And so that entire, I wonder why your objective isn't working, why your approach isn't working. Well, geez, you're denying people their humanity by treating them like a cog in a machine. Okay. And so all these things, the victims reach out and all that stuff. And then it says the It Gets Better panel could only spout platitudes. Victims should wear their abuse like armor. Oh, well, okay, it's the It Gets Better platitude. The whole It Gets Better campaign was a platitude. What did you expect from a collection of platitudes but platitudes? Like, this is somebody who decided to do an article and set out to only go places that would confirm what she wanted to put in the article. And it's op-ed, that's fine, but see, I feel like I'm wasting my time now. I'm only doing this as something as a therapy session for gamers who are upset right now. And this is an indication of the supportiveness of the gaming community that I'm doing this because I get people are upset. So I will take the time. And no, this is not replacing the 4 o'clock live stream on Lady Bits. That's something completely different. And then they mentioned JonTron and PewDiePie, and I don't know why they dragged Notch into this. And you can tell this article isn't written for gamers because they don't use their online names. I don't know where this Minecraft taught children to make casually anti-Semitic jokes came from, but citation needed, man. There's a click through. What happens? And this site loads like crap. Oh, it's a tweet. Are you serious? That's your source? That's your source for Minecraft teaching kids to make anti-Semitic jokes. Someone's fucking Twitter feed? You're shitting me. Excuse the language. Okay. Here we go. Pew Research, Pew Research is a great talking point for people, but I've been told by a guy who does statistics for a living that serious academics don't use Pew Research. Pew Research is go away press release, is for people who just want to do a quick media story, have a jumping off talking point. It's designed just to get press. I have been warned away from all but the most cursory use of Pew Research because their questions are too broad. It's not target enough for it to be useful. Well, there are 112 people watching this. Jeez. Preemptive reports on swatting, lock down the private message channels. Oh my God. It bothers me also, as somebody who's been doxxed, it bothers me that people use doxing and treat it like somebody actually broke into your house and did something bad for you. It's not the same. And the thing about doxing is the first time it happens, it's terrifying. Second time it happens, it's annoying. The third time it happens is, the first time it happens, the third time it happens, like this again. And you eventually realize that, yes, stuff like that is giving a crazy person the tools to stalk you. The reality for me, though, is I have also had situations where people followed me home from live gigs. So if a disturbed person, and I shouldn't imply that mental illness is the thing behind this. It's a unique kind of issue when people stalk people. But if a disturbed person and an angry person and a bitter person does something bad, that is on them. Now, that doesn't mean doxing is right, because doxing is an intent to menace. People wouldn't dox if they didn't think it scared someone. I personally don't understand doxing. Back in my day, in the 1980s, when we didn't have this newfangled internet, we doxed each other all the time. It was called the phone book. And you'd look up people in the phone book, and there was their name and their address and their phone number. And now y'all, you young whippersnappers, y'all call that doxing in this day and age. I mean, that perspective, okay? Everybody was doxed back in the day. Maybe it's time to bring back the phone book, because then this doxing stuff would stop. Like, that's where most people get, quote unquote, dox. They find an online white pages and look up publicly available information. And that's why it's legal. That's why you can't arrest someone unless they've actually published something that isn't publicly available. The minute you release your information on a white pages, on a YouTube stream, something else, people can use that. People can cite that completely legally. But here's the thing. You put it out there already, so it is of no harm to you. You already released that information. So take that for what you will. Okay. Hate communities like Gamergate provide social networks for all kinds of abusers and harassers. They bring in, wow, they compare Kotaku in Action and V, which aren't, see, people don't know their history when they're making that connection. Have each other's backs is fundamental. This article says, I'm going to move on to this. Here's the thing. These people, these outrage warriors, do not have each other's backs. They hunt each other for sport. The minute someone slips up, they have to grovel and plead for their soul so that they're let back into the collective. They do not have each other's backs. They are, stop it. They wait for the next person to screw up so they can jump all over them. Trust me, it happened to me. And guys in the chat, I don't want to get into what's worse, what group is worse, all that stuff. People are people. There are good people in every group. There are not so good people in every group. Enough said. One person asked what doxing is. Doxing is the release of personal information online, like an address, like a real name. It really held some weight when people's real names were concealed for privacy reasons. If somebody is, working under a pseudonym because they work in government or something like that, and their name is doxed, their name is exposed. Exposed? Exposed. I like that word. It is exposed and exploded. That is a different thing than, and I don't like it when people release people's parents' phone numbers because you should leave family out of your beefs. But yeah, so, and here's the big conclusion, okay? So what's changed since Gamergate? On the surface, not much. Are you kidding me? Again, why haven't I heard your name? And what do you mean things haven't changed? The industry has been roiling and cracking down, and there have been quite a few changes. I say not for the better. I think female characters have gotten more boring, and there's been less female voices in the press because, oh God, more harassment. And there have been changes. There have been changes. They're just not for the better. Stop it, email. See, I'm doxing myself, but my email popping up. There's been plenty of change. The industry is is going through like spasms, trying to figure out what to do. So this person clearly has an uninformed perspective. And PAX has made headway in improving conditions for marginalized gamers, and it's worth noting that nobody misgendered me all weekend. But there's definitely still a reason I never had to wait in line for the bathroom. So we have someone's particular personal narrative coming into this as now. And this should have been, if you're going to write a gonzo piece, it's got to be about you from the beginning. You can't drop that in at the end. Like, no. Now you're showing your hand. Now you're showing that this is about your own anger and outrage for something, and your belief that gaming culture as a whole is still nightmarishly toxic for people who aren't cisgendered men, and even some who are. Okay, you just said at a gaming convention, PAX, with 80,000 people there, where you saw a guy take a picture of probably a cisgendered woman's ass, but nobody misgendered you all weekend, and you didn't have to wait in line for the bathroom. I'm assuming that because I don't know what that even means. Let's click on this. Maybe it'll link to another Twitter. All right, so it's a dead link. 404. Okay, I don't know what this means, but it's so toxic that assumingly you're a trans woman and nobody misgendered you. That does not seem the mark of a completely toxic environment. This author is being unfair, and not revealing that element until the end, I believe, is somewhat dishonest. Because I have a bit of an issue with confusing, I talked about it earlier, confusing transphobia and misogyny. Transphobia, there are some pretty major things that have to be dealt with. It's funny, one person in chat says, don't have to wait in line for a toilet means she didn't use the women's. And the reality is, a gaming convention, this is why I wasn't sure what they meant by the metaphor. A gaming convention is the only place where the men's room line can be longer than the women's. I have seen it happen because the joke is usually, well, now you guys know what it's like for us at the theater, because there's a lot more guys than women. We breeze in and out. We're always joking about it. And this is why experiences at these events, this is why actually being a gamer and actually being an experienced game journalist matters so much. Now, at a convention, it might not be the same because there's cosplayers. And so both bathrooms are probably loaded with people spreading body glitter all over the place. But at a core gaming event, you breeze through the ladies' room. I am reading it on the Wayback Machine, but the other links worked, chatter. So the tweet worked and things like that. But you breeze through the ladies' room. And that's why I didn't know what that meant. And these are instances in the video that, not the video, the article that show that this is not written for gamers. This is something written as a propaganda piece for the mainstream so they can continue to keep gaming down, because gaming is a very powerful thing. I'm not going to spend the time on the bathroom thing, guys. I don't want to give these things clicks because I think these things are published to generate clicks. So I am not giving it clicks. To clarify, is this a trans woman or a made-up gender Marxist? The bio on Bitch Media does link through. I'm not going to do it because I'll get accused of encouraging harassment and everything like that. But if you want to go and look up the author's name, it does come up. We guess. And this is sloppy. You know, if you're referencing that nobody misgendered you all weekend and you're talking about a trans Twitch streamer, what are you trying to say here? Like, don't be coy. Are you writing this as an experiential piece as a trans woman at PAX? Or are you keeping yourself out of this article? Pick one. You can't have it both ways. If you try to have it both ways, it's sloppy. You're crossing the streams. So, as I was saying about transphobia, there are serious immediate issues involving the inclusion of trans people. And they need to have decisions made very quickly because it's affecting school-age children, the bathroom laws and things like that. So transphobia is quite a serious modern, modern issue that is working its way through governments. And it's one of those periods where we move forward, we move back, we move forward, we're back to Paula Abdul's on 2 steps forward, I take 2 steps back. We come together because lawmakers are hacks, and you know, that wasn't the words. But this matters. And toying with this stuff in an article is not cool. My original video for this said pretty much the same thing. It is not cool to play with people's lives this way. At least this person is possibly affected. And so okay, let's wrap up and then we can end this painful slog. But although industry insiders aren't terribly invested in real change, citation needed. Did you talk to a single fucking game dev lady? A single one. How can you say industry insiders aren't terribly invested in real change? I have talked to, I would say possibly hundreds of game developers who are intensely invested in change, but not change for the sake of change. They constantly want to get better. They constantly want to attract new customers. They just want to do it right. Ugh! You cannot say that industry insiders aren't terribly invested in real change. Prove it. One person said, is transphobia a male thing because I've never heard of a female with transphobia? Oh, no. Somebody implied I was sounding like a TERF this week, a trans-exclusive radical feminist, and I hit the roof. My video that went up at 11 o'clock today outlined this. Certain radical feminists, certain trans-exclusive radical feminists are horrendously awful to transgender people. They treat them as rapists in women's clothing who just want to come into female spaces to prey on women. It is awful and horrible and I don't think people should throw words around like that because that is an ugly, 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 ugly corner of feminism. It's disgusting. And this is the thing. This is why feminists who paint all gamers with the same brush should really look at those pockets of feminism like TERFs. We should not be painting everybody with the same brush and then not expect the same treatment. And TERFs just anger me because how do you claim to want inclusion and support for your group and then reject another group? Just rabbit. Okay, so we learned something today. Shadow learned the term TERF. Wait. This is a complete verse. Although industry insiders aren't terribly invested in real change, the resilience I saw in the diversity lounge and at DePass's panel gave me some hope that enough gamers are. Wait a sec. Isn't the article the fragility of gaming culture, the toxic misogyny in gaming culture? So what's with this conclusion? If you believe enough gamers are invested in real change, then you cannot then say that gaming culture is fragile. Interest in change is the opposite of fragility. Which is it? Which is it? Okay. What we deserve is to pursue our gaming passions without fear of abuse verbal or otherwise. Okay, very different things. Verbal abuse is annoying. Okay, the only time verbal abuse makes you afraid is if someone is empowered to back that up with violence or ability to do something to you. They have to have a position of power over you. And so verbal or otherwise, no, they're very separate categories. And I have a real issue with people encouraging women to be afraid of words. Because what that does is self-selects us out of competitive areas, out of competitive industries, and out of jobs where we can make a lot of money and get a lot of power because somebody might say bad words at us. This is, and then people start going, well, self-selection. No, we're taught to be afraid. We're taught to be afraid. And I think this is the number one systemic thing that we need to work on. We need to work on this fear. We need to stop generating articles that encourage women to be afraid. BS. Okay? No, they're words. I deal with it every day. It's at people call me names every day. People impugn my character. People attack my family. And that's where I blow my stack. Because again, you leave my family out of this. My mother doesn't even understand what she does, what I do for a living. You don't bring my mother into my opinions. My mother is not me. We see the world very differently. And they do it to get at me. I get it, but it's still wrong. Okay? And if I can do one thing on this journey that I'm on, it is to stop barriers like this that this article creates in the minds of women regarding gaming. Because I know what gaming did for me. I know how it helped me with my self-esteem. I know how it allowed me to basically be my own role model as a playable character in a game. Because there were no good role models for girls like me. I didn't fit anywhere. So I could go into a game and, identify more with Mario than Princess Peach. And that was okay. The game wasn't telling me it was wrong. And Wonder Boy was the one for me. I don't know why. I don't know why Wonder Boy was on jumping on, snails instead of turtles was just a thing. But you fought these big tiki monsters at the end. And yeah, it was a rescue a princess narrative. But I like being a dude with a big super deformed chibi head and running and throwing hatchets and that's cultural appropriation now. But it taught me how to be dynamic. It taught me how to do stuff. That game, the metaphor of you can only beat the game if you jump over that first enemy, stayed with me. And this stopped me from getting infected with toxic girlhood, with toxic femininity, for lack of a better term, that passivity, right? Because I was playing, I remember the game Wizard of War in the arcade, Mortal Kombat. Oh my God. The fact that game came out in sort of those really vulnerable teenage years. And Jill in Resident Evil came out when I was a teenager, and it was the teenage years were rough for me for a lot of reasons. Okay, to see her in the game and to see the experience of the people I played games with were mostly guys, but there were some women. Resident Evil, I'm saying. A lot of women weren't interested in Resident Evil because it was gross. I was like, zombies, give! Game terrified me. But I remember seeing every guy I knew pick Jill over Chris playing that game because Jill had the gun. And they never complained about playing as Jill. They made a choice based on resources. And that's why the shtick is blood. I hope it isn't Chris's blood. Because you're playing as Jill. But, I experienced that. And then, Mortal Kombat. I still remember the first time I saw a Mortal Kombat coin-op machine. It was in the variety store next to the chicken joint that sold spicy curly fries at a place called Yorkgate Mall. And I remember the sound of the boom, that gong, the duh, 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 that, and it was like a couple of invisible hands reached out and like pulled me into that game. And there's a guy playing, he had a mullet and like skinny jeans back in the days, the last type of skinny jeans were in. And he smelled a bit like cigarette smoke. But, I sucked at it the first time. But that was like, and that was even before they added Katana and Melina. And I just thought, like, not only was it Sonya was in it, there was just something about that game that was so larger than life that it gave me permission to be larger than life, to be seen, to get out there, because I was painfully shy. And I really think that more young women can benefit the way I did. The problem is when young women try to talk about games, then they get the, oh, you play that? You play video games? Aren't those like misogynist? Like the way they depict women is horrible. And they just get crushed. And that's wrong. And that's based on the misperceptions that articles like this propagate. And this is why I didn't want to go through it. But people were so upset. And just the fact that 126 people are here, proof positive, like, wow, this is a pretty big stream. 128. But this matters. And this fear, we are encouraging women to feel this irrational fear. And I think the message we should be giving to girls is, okay, somebody calls you a name, and does that affect you in the slightest? Does that matter? No, I'll give you the answer. It does not matter. That is their words, and that is their opinion. And you are not defined by their opinion. This goes back to the stuff Simone de Beauvoir wrote about women are acutely aware that everything they do is watched. And de Beauvoir rightly said that differentiates female behavior from male behavior because men don't have the same, or they don't interact with what came to be known as the gaze in the same way. And yeah, someone in the chat said, honestly, I wouldn't have seen this article. That's how I felt too. But people were really upset, so I decided to make this video. And I get to talk again about how I think, that it seems like there is an agenda here to keep women out of video games through deception. You have to wonder why. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot. Like, what is the impetus to make it seem worse than it really is? 80,000 people, one guy took a picture of a girl's butt. That's a pretty good ratio. That's better than walking down the street in Vegas. And I'll end on this story. But back in the day when I used to go to San Diego Comic-Con, and this was part of the thing, I used to go to Comic-Con all the time. It was great fun. The normies ruined it. It's no longer like a Comic-Con. When they started putting panels on The Office and Twilight at San Diego Comic-Con, they should have just changed the name to San Diego Pop Culture Con, because it's not about superheroes and stuff anymore. But, I dressed as Power Girl, and I dressed as, I did a Mezco figurine one year, Return of the Jedi Leia, and people were great in the convention, because at that point, Power Girl was a lesser known character. She was like a JSA character. She didn't have her own book or anything yet. And so people were just excited to see a character they didn't see much of. Yeah, she has giant boobs, but that's, part of the reason I pick the cosplays I do is like, hey, some women do look like this. Ease up. Stop saying we're not real. We're real. Some of us. My God, my whole family has boobs like this. It was funny because when I was a kid, we had to do a poster based on a book we read, and I did the Phantom Toll Booth. So I did the dog with the big clock in his side and the two princesses, Rhyme and Reason. And I drew them. It's funny, I was big into body diversity even then. I drew one as sort of skinny and small busted, and the other as shapely and larger busted. I was basically drawing my mother and my sister. Sorry, not my sister, my mother and her sister, who my aunt is very slender and my mom is built like me. And the reactions, as maybe 6, 7 years old, and the reactions were like, whoa! And I'm like, what? I am drawing my family. I am drawing my experience. And people made a big deal out of it. And that was when I started becoming like, we didn't have a word for it back then, but the whole body shaming thing. And that, fast forward to Comic-Con, guys didn't body shame. It was the first time like I felt like, oh, I'm actually just curvy, I'm not fat. Which is another thing that media with physical women did for me. Because don't forget, I grew up in the Calvin Klein heroin chic Kate Moss era where beautiful women were stick thin to the point of being sickly. It actually was called heroin chic. And so people were amazing in the convention. But after the show closed and all that stuff, we went to the Gaslamp District, which is right across the transit tracks in San Diego from the convention center. We went into the Gaslamp District and started interacting with the normies. You felt the tone change. I felt the way people looked at me was different. And all of a sudden you get the leering and you get the cat calling and you get the the entitlement to assume certain things because of the way I was dressed. And that to me is the difference between fans, the difference between nerds, for lack of a better term, geeks, and normies. And so when people start saying that geeks are the problem, well, you never compared it to general society. Where is your article? Where is the comparative going to a car show or going to, something that is a predominantly male space without the geek element? There's no comparative then. So how do we trust your conclusions? We can't. So I'll wrap there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully we can stop talking about this now and I can go back to talking about my Kickstarter and rustle it up support for that. Please, if you like this stream, please share the Kickstarter link. Please spread the word. And I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's building. Maybe I'll be back at 4:00 for the Lady Bit stream. Wow, maybe 1:00's the time, or 12:30, 12 o'clock's the time to do it, because there's a lot of people in this chat. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.